His mission to Hello, welcome to today's video, and today we're going to be talking about Eisenhorn. Oh, also I did want to say that I'm not in my typical garb of reviewing books. I figured that was just a little too much. I want to go to something a little bit more accessible, easier for me to give you more quality in my review rather than dress up nicer. So that's the reason I'm just in a plain black shirt. Plus, I just got off work, so I'm a little bit just wanting to talk about it instead of getting dressed. Let's just talk about this book. Now, before we get into the actual review of this book, I want to take a couple minutes to talk about my own novel that I'm publishing. It's the second novel to Knights Without Kings, so it's a sequel, and it's called The Twin Princes. So if you're interested, if you don't want to hear any of that, you just want to skip right to the review, there's going to be a timestamp below to just go right to that. For everyone else, though, let me just briefly mention that I kind of took a month off from doing these kinds of videos for the sake of my novel and the beta process and trying to get all my editors organized and coordinated. And finally, after hearing their thoughts and they finished the book and with the results, I'm really satisfied with the results. I got 100% feedback rating on my beta editors, which anybody who knows and has worked with beta editors before knows that it's typically a 50 to maybe 75% chance of beta feedback, and I got 100. Every single one of my beta editors read the book to its entirety and gave me feedback on it. So that's a few good signs right there in itself. So I'm very happy in the results, and the book is going to be released on October 9th, 2019, and I'm already way ahead of schedule. Within the next couple months, I'll be ready to send this to the professional editor. And it still will be almost a year out from there. But it gives me time to get everything else ready for the third book, the finale of the trilogy. So I'm very excited, and that's kind of why I've been silent this past month, is just because I've been working on that. But now that it's over, we should be having videos every single week. And I'm very excited to get back into it. So without further ado, Eisenhorn. So Eisenhorn is a trilogy written by Dan Abnett, and it's based in the Warhammer 40k universe. Now, if you're interested in the Warhammer 40k universe, you don't have to know much about Warhammer 40k when reading this book. This book is science fiction. It's a hard science fiction, so its lore is very deep, and there are thousands and thousands of books that are based in the Warhammer 40k universe, and it's also based on a miniature, which has hundreds of other books that are just for the miniature tabletop game, which it's a fun game. My best friend is actually very much involved in it, and I'm going to have a couple of shots of his there. It's just so great. And plus, my best friend is he's also my cousin too, so that works out. He is also a very professional artist. He paints them in a very professional way, and it's really amazing to see his miniatures come to life in that way. But this is the Eisenhorn trilogy novel. So this is a trilogy made up of Xenos, Malleus, and Hereticus. It's all written by Dan Abnett, and it is one of my favorite science fiction books of all time. I said you didn't have to have prior knowledge, but let me just give you a crash course. War, blood, perpetual death. This is a bolter. This is a space marine. Chaos is bad. God Emperor is good. And this is an Inquisitor, one who enforces the will of the God Emperor on mankind spread over the vast imperium of space. This is Xenos, which means alien. Through and through, this is a detective novel clad in the spacesuit of science fiction, stamped with the seal of Warhammer 40k. Dan Abnett is the author, and he brought a fresh and new perspective to the typical monotonous roid bolterfest that is the Warhammer 40k novel. And even then, this is no average science fiction novel. Now, I want to talk about the artwork real quick. So there was a re-release of artwork that happened a few years back, and the release is not too impressive. It looks like such a hardcore fantasy that I would assume that most readers would be turned off by it. It doesn't seem very inviting. It seems kind of boring. I'm not really interested in it. But don't let that fool you. These pages are riddled with beautiful imagery. I, however, much more prefer the omnibus's artwork, and this is what it looks like. Now, I've had this book for quite a while, and it is one of my favorite science fiction novels, and just look how thick it is. Extra thin! This novel has Xenos, Malleus, and Hereticus all put into one, and it's almost 800 pages. Okay, 763 pages of pure sci-fi goodness. Oh, and I know I'm not supposed to do this, but I'm also gonna nerd out a little bit. This is the second trilogy. It's called Ravenor, and just look how beautiful that looks. Like, this must be an artist's dream to make something so awesome looking. And by the way, these omnibuses are hard to find, so I'm really lucky to have this one right here. So it's pretty clear I'm a fan of this books, and Dan Abnett has been such an influential artist and writer and artist that I want to one day have my trilogy be put into an omnibus and sell it that way. I don't think I'll be making a trilogy of omnibuses. Who knows, but you know, we'll see. But definitely, it's one of the things I'm very envious about is the length of books. I love long books that tell amazing stories, and Dan Abnett did an amazing job with this series called Eisenhorn. I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Let's talk about the book. So the novel starts out with Eisenhorn, the protagonist of the novel, an Imperial Inquisitor of the Ordo Xenos on a planet pursuing a murderous heretic by the name of Eklon. Eklon attempts to evade Eisenhorn by waking the dormant populace out of hibernation. Trouble is, suddenly waking out of hibernation, which usually takes days of space healers and doctors, can be lethal, but that was the least of Eklon's worries. So Eisenhorn chases Eklon through this vast labyrinth of hibernating peoples, and the only thing that greets these people as they're suddenly shocked from their sleep is death. Eisenhorn, however, isn't alone. He has a team, and one of them is a pilot called Midas Betancourt, and his compatriot Loris Vibin. So together they chase Eklon through these corridors. However, Eklon murders Vibin and continues his escapade, much to Midas' dismay because he and Vibin had a thing together. Midas is pissed, and he becomes even more resolute to kill Eklon. Eisenhorn finally catches up to Eklon and puts Vibin's muzzle into Eklon's mouth and blows his brains out in an ironic cacophony of blood. His mission to find the murderous Eklon after months and months of hunting has finally come to an end. But questions still stand. Why was Eklon on this planet? Why cause thousands of people to lose their lives by waking them all of a sudden? Well, it turns out the only lead was the name Pontius, which leads him away from the planet that they're on. Eisenhorn decides to follow the lead away, but just before he sets off, he is placed under intense questioning by the hierarchs of the planet. They are pissed that Eklon escaped their justice for the murders of thousands of citizens and are looking for a place to pin the blame. During the questioning, Eisenhorn meets a local policeman named Fischig, who joins Eisenhorn's retinue, albeit reluctantly at first. After, Eisenhorn concludes the case with the authorities on that planet, and his path takes him to another planet in the Imperium in search of the mysterious Pontius. His lead takes him to the Gloff family, which one of the ancestors of the ancient house was once named Pontius. You see, they had connections to the powers of chaos in the past, and if it's any indication, being connected to chaos is a very bad thing in the Imperium, and it can lead to destruction of entire planets, and sometimes, well, I don't know about galaxies, but definitely planets, just like that. Even if there's a whiff of chaos, it's been known to happen that Space Marines or even there's vast spaceships just decide to blow up a planet, even though it may or may not have had chaos in it, but they'd rather destroy it than risk a planet controlled by chaos. But it turns out that the records have been clean for some time, but still Eisenhorn decides to go to the planet and investigate for himself. During this time, Eisenhorn encounters other members of the Ordo Xenos, and they collaborate to uncover what they think could be a mass conspiracy. Eisenhorn's hunch was right about Pontius and the Gloss connection to the chaos, especially concerning a mysterious alien race known as the Saruthi, which is a big no-no for the Empire because they're extremely xenophobic. But before Eisenhorn can blow the Gloss family cover, he is captured and tortured by the Gloss. A heretic by the name Glock surgically cuts into his face, preventing Eisenhorn the ability to smile ever again. Then Eisenhorn is put into an arena for an entertaining death. During this time, he is joined by Elizabeth Bequin, who is a psychic blank. Essentially, a psyker is a psychic person, someone who has abilities to influence things and people to do certain things. Obviously, that's what psychics do, right? But they're called psykers in this world, and Eisenhorn is a psyker. He's not a very powerful one, but still enough to serve him, basically. And Bequin is a blank, so it's a very interesting concept because Bequin is a psychic blank, which basically negates any kind of psychic activity in the area. So that's bad for Eisenhorn because it means it hurts him basically to be in her presence. She's a very repulsive presence. But he realizes that it could be useful for him in the future against other psychers. So it's a very interesting concept here, and I love the way it's introduced. I won't spoil exactly how they met. It's very awesome, and I think you should definitely read it for yourself. But she joins Eisenhorn in taking the Glaw family down. Anyway, Eisenhorn and his crew are attacked by a group of Carnodons in a massive arena. But, using his wits and a little luck, he is able to break free from the arena. The Carnodons break free as well and start causing havoc within the arena spectators. During this time, Midas, who is now with Eisenhorn in the arena, alerts the Inquisition that is in the area, and they move en masse to the Glaw estate with a regiment. A brief battle breaks out and the Inquisitors quickly kill the majority of House Glaw, with exception of a few. Eisenhorn and the other Inquisitors give chase to the Glaws, and they track them down in a field. The Glaw hierarchs have an artifact, which Eisenhorn later learns is called the Pontius, and Eisenhorn takes it from them. But then the Imperial Guard show up to save the day. Eisenhorn is reunited with a few members of his order, and Eisenhorn shares the information he has gleaned with them. It is revealed that the Pontius is connected to the Necrotech, which is a chaos source of incredible power. Suddenly, mass chaos erupts from within the Imperial Guard starships, and they begin firing upon one another. Turns out a false alarm went out among the fleet that they were being attacked, and, because this is a newly formed regiment, their eagerness became the death of thousands of men and a few ships. Basically a small fleet. Eisenhorn, however, knows this was no accidental false alarm. The signal was given by a traitor general, and Eisenhorn gives chase to the general in his own private ship, knowing the mass of Imperial Guard ships aren't far behind. The star system that Eisenhorn chases the traitor fleet to is on the fringes of known space. Everything is wrong. There is a feeling of unease in everyone, and then Eisenhorn understands that he is in the Ceruthi system. This is a new race of aliens. The system is dying, but one planet is stable enough for them to land. But when they do land, things are worse than they seem. There are structures built at odd angles, and the Ceruthi themselves are difficult to understand. But they have in their possession the Necrotech. And it gets even worse. A Chaos Space Marine is in their midst, watching the traitors receive the Necrotech. Eisenhorn and his retinue open fire, and a massive fight breaks out. So Eisenhorn is such a badass. He actually fights this Chaos Space Marine hand to hand and wins, cutting his head clean off. I'm simplifying this a lot because, trust me, it's really difficult to believe. A man versus a Chaos Space Marine. But trust me, Dan Abnett made it in such a way that you don't have to suspend your disbelief that much. The battle is over, and most Ceruthi are either dead or run away. Eisenhorn takes the Necrotech, and you'll have to read the ending for yourself. Unfortunately, I don't want to spoil it because it sets up the second part of this trilogy up so well, and it's definitely necessary to read in order to move on to the next book. If you like science fiction novels or mystery novels, this is a pretty entertaining read for you. Now, I don't expect you to like it as much as I liked it. Honestly, this is the first Warhammer 40k book I'd ever read, and I really enjoy it. Well, okay, that's not true. I read Faith and Fire. I guess that's my first Warhammer 40k book. I may review that. Maybe not. It just depends on how I feel this book does, I guess. Or if people like me reviewing these kind of science fiction Warhammer 40k novels. This is the first book in a trilogy that is the first of a trilogy. So that'd be 9 books, essentially. Unfortunately, for the last trilogy, Dan Abnett has only released the first book. I don't know what's going on. I've been waiting for forever for the second of that last trilogy to come out. I don't even know if he's writing it or what's going on with that, but I don't know if you're with me on this one, but I really want to read and finish that last trilogy, and who knows when it'll be written. The action is fast-paced, and the writing style is just superb from Dan Abnett. It's a big departure from the hulking Chaos Space Marine, roid-infested stories that we have, and then Tyranid clouds and swarms that just blot out the sun. There's more finesse, I believe, to this novel than typical Warhammer 40k novels, and when it comes to science fiction in general, it's not that much of a philosophical book. Like I'm saying, it's more of a mystery story, and you're trying to find out and uncover with Eisenhorn what exactly this chaos is, and whether you should be a complete opponent to it or if there are some uses for it. And that's really the whole question that this trilogy of trilogies brings up, and it's very interesting. I love the style. Obviously, I'm gonna rate it like a 9 out of 10. I mean, this is one of my favorite science fiction novels, and this is one of my favorite science fiction series to read. I'll reread them and go back to them. That's how much I really enjoyed this. So, have you ever read any of the Eisenhorn or the Ravenor or even the Bequin first book of the last trilogy, or even any other Warhammer 40k book? What did you think of it? Did you enjoy it? Did you kind of laugh and scoff at some of the more unbelievable moments? Let me know what you think below. I'd really be interested in talking to you about this. If there is a Warhammer 40k book you'd like me to read, let me know. I'd be interested in reading it. And this is the first of... I have planned out videos all the way till the end of this year, and I'm very excited to getting into that. So next week we're going to be talking about one of the first stories that I ever wrote, and I'm going to be telling you what exactly influenced that and what that looked like at the end. And so that's kind of what I'm looking at for next week, and then I have every week after that a video planned. If there's a video that you want me to do or talk about in writing related terms, please let me know. I'd love to talk to you about that. And remember, I'm also promoting my novel Knights Without Kings that was released December of last year, and you can click on the link below to take a look at that. And keep in mind and mark on your calendars, October 9th of next year is when the Twin Princes sequel to the Knights Without Kings will be released. Well, that's it for me for today, and I hope you have an amazing day. Be safe out there. Be careful. There's a lot of crazy people going around. Don't be one of those crazy people, and help each other and love each other and love yourself and accept yourself.
Love yourself. Accept yourself.
Anyway, you have a nice day, okay? I'll see y'all later. Bye.